Hello and welcome back to the channel. Right, today I have for you a dirty great big tank. This is the American M60, the MBT that they had before the Abrahams. So, usual format, we will do a 60-second speed build, we'll do some pics, and then we'll get into the review. So, let's crack on and build. So, welcome back. Right. So what do we think to the M60? And yes, I've taken off the mine clearing device in the front. It's a little bit unwieldy to pick it all up. Do we like? Well, let's go through what you get. Well, first of all, you get these instructions from Panlos. Now, Panlos have shown before with things like the Fletcher, the USS Fletcher, the Challenger, and also the Centurion that I've done. They can produce some very, very good instructions, and yeah, these are up there with those. There's no compromise on the quality from them. They are, to give you that little bit extra that you would expect from somebody like Panlos. Now, one of the nice things about the instructions, apart from them being very clear, is that they, I don't know if this is a trend that's recently started or whether it's just something I've woken up to, but on a lot of the phases they are using smaller amounts of bricks. So what this means is that you don't have to collect 16-20 bricks in to do one phase, which can take you a while, and it slows you down. And while obviously I'm doing these reasonably fast because I've got 3 models to get out a week, you're not necessarily going to want to do that at home, but what you do want is that feeling of progression, and that's what the smaller counts in the phase, smaller pieces in the phases does. It means that you are going to be constantly turning pages in that instruction book because you are doing sort of 4 or 6 bricks at a time, and so therefore you are moving quite rapidly through the book and creating that sense of progression and achievement as well as you go through that. So a little bit of psychology going on, I think, in some of these instruction books, and it is something that I've noticed of late. A lot of companies now seem to be reduce the amount of bricks that you do on each phase, perhaps to get that effect. Everything that's here, I've got 2 dozen bricks over, thereabouts. Nothing was warped, and everything is all the same colour, so nothing wrong there. Now, the overall look of this thing, it's pretty good, I gotta say, or at least from my perspective. I think this is very good indeed. It's certainly up there with the rest of the models that I've done with Panlos, and particularly the two tanks, the Challenger, which, as some of you know, was, or has been, certainly my favourite tank to build. And this is not far behind it. There are one or two issues with this, which I'll get into in a bit, but they're not a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination. And as I say, there's lots and lots of detail on here. It's the way that they've designed the build is sensible. I think that is one of the most frustrating things sometimes, is when you're building a model and you can't work out why you're being asked to build it in a certain way. This, on the other hand, to my mind at least, is generally built really sensibly. They've obviously test built this, which is, as some of you may be aware, is a bit of a bug of mine, that some of the models that I've done have very obviously not been test built before they've been put onto the market. Otherwise some things would change straight away. In fact, there was one model that I did that could not possibly have been test built because you could not build it the way it was designed in the book and with the parts that were given to you. So, but this, yeah, they've taken some time and trouble about this. It's just very, very good. You know, from the easy opening on the engine that you can see inside there, which is an unusual type of engine from what you would normally expect to get. You've got your opening hatch for the driver's side, and it's very easy to see from that driver's hatch where that it was essentially that was carried forward onto the aerohams, because they are essentially the same thing. Now, you get 6 minifigures with this, and yes, they are slightly out of scale. I think we said before the minifigures are, I think they're 1/35th scale, and I would say this model is probably 1/32nd, so there is a slight disparity. They do look like 12-year-olds running the tank, which I sure is probably not allowed. But the actual minifigures themselves, for a change, are quite good. Now, as I say, there is lots and lots of detail on here from the and I like the way that they've used some sort of ordinary bricks to create other effects. The explosive reactive armour that they've used, or that they've created with just these sort of capping bricks, quite clever. I like it. And yeah, obviously through this I'll be putting up pictures of M60s, and you can clearly see that it gives off that effect of the extra armour that was added to this thing. It's very, very good indeed. I've got no real complaints. However, I've got two main complaints with this. Firstly, and this is a general complaint really, that's not specific to this tank but to most tanks, what I tend to find is that when you put the turret onto the mechanism to hold it, that would allow you to swing it round, it might be accurate in that they are getting it quite tight to the body of the tank. However, in my experience, that tends to mean that you get actually very limited motion of the turret before you are hitting something. So what I tend to do is I tend to put an extra plate in there just to give it that extra couple of millimeters extra clearance on the side, so you can then bring the turret around. Now, if you notice, it still doesn't go 360. I would need to lift it probably another level but as I say, that's not something that's specific to this model. I think most of the tanks I tend to do that with, but yes, this could actually do with probably another plate in there to lift it just a little bit more. But I think if it did that, you're going to start affecting the accuracy of the design. Then you're going to start putting, you don't want it to turret on a stalk, for instance. These are stickers rather than decals, which actually is a little bit of a shame, because I think decals would have really looked nice on this. But they're done very well. They're not fiddly particularly to put on in general, and there's not a massive amount of them, so yeah, that's absolutely fine. As I can live with that, but decals would have been really nice on this. Now, the only real issue I have with this is actually on the gun. Now, this cloth cover that was very common on the M60, it would have been nice if that had been a little bit bigger, and then perhaps you could have put a loose-ish elastic band around to give that sort of bag effect for the real thing, but not so much that. It's the movement, the elevation on the gun itself. They've done this on a twin hinge, so you have the gun on essentially a vertical plate, and that plate then is hinged. It goes into hinges at the bottom, and what tends to happen, obviously these hinges tend to be fairly stiff, so you try and elevate the gun and it will pull the hinge slightly off. You bring the gun back and it will pull the other side off, and then it will collapse completely. And there's just, I can't see any way around that really, because the way these hinges are, obviously you have to push them in, which means that by their nature they are always going to be stiff because they are compression fitted. There's just no way around it, so that's a little bit of a shame. And my only real criticism of this, that it's very difficult to get the gun to move up and down without it coming off. Which, yeah, as I say, a bit of a shame, but if that's all I'm going to really level up this, then it's pretty good. Actually, the other thing, I really like this. I think that this mine clearance thing, it just clips on at the very front with these two bits here. The wheels do rotate. They're a little stiff, but there's no big deal on that one. I like the chains that they've got at the front, the effect there, and it really does add something to the tank and turn it into something that is very noticeable. My son very much was like, wow, what is that, when he first saw this, which I always take as a good sign, because usually he's not particularly that interested, but yeah, it certainly has presence with this attached to the front. I mean, it's a fair size anyway, and fairly weighty. But yeah, I really do like that. I think it's a nice little extra touch. Obviously, you can have it with or without. Now, cost on this thing, £32.08, which I think, if you compare it to the two other big tanks that I have here, I've got the Challenger and I've got the Abrams. The Abrams is about 43 from Carsley, which it's a very good tank. I don't think it's as good as this, but it is a very good tank. And the Challenger, I want to say was 34, but I'll put it up here, whatever it was. And this, I would say, is nearly as good as the Challenger. If the gun worked a little better, and you could 360 the turret, I would say that it's as good as. It's just those little bits holding it back. But otherwise, this is an excellent purchase, I feel. I think that's a £32 and whatever is a fair price for this. As I say, it's 1,753 pieces. It's very accurate, it's fun to build, and let's face it, that's a big plus. It's easy to build, but it's not simplistic. There are times you're going to have to concentrate on what you're doing to get it right. Overall, I would say this is a really excellent model. Another good one from Panlos. You could class me as a bit of a fanboy, but then I've never had a bad model from them. So you've got to take as you find it on these. So yes, I can highly recommend this. It's if you've got any inkling at all that you want a decent tank, especially obviously, as I said before, the winter's coming in the northern hemisphere right now, so nights are longer, and we don't tend to be as active in the evenings as we were in the summer. So you want something to get your teeth stuck into. I mean, this took me a good sort of 6 and a bit hours to do. So for most people, yeah, it's going to take a couple of evenings at least. So I think it's well worth it. So hopefully you've liked this review. If you have, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you again. You take care. Bye bye.